Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
I'm Ethan Young, content writer at Isaiah Industries, and we're a manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. Today, my co-host is Ryan Bell. How you doing, Ryan?
Hey, good morning, Ethan. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We've been busy lately we got an event coming up this April, the Metal Roofing Summit. So kind of been thinking about that, working on some marketing and stuff. I know you've been busy with that too. What have you been up to with that?
Just a lot of kind of getting the website up to date and ship shape. Just published the schedule yesterday. So if you go to metalroofingsummit.com, you can see what the agenda is looking like and the speakers we have lined up. We have a few empty spots still that we're looking to fill, but I'm sure within the next week or so, those will be in there, and we'll have our lineup set in stone. And just looking forward to seeing everyone again in April.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Last year was actually my first time, my first chance going to a Metal Roofing Summit in person, and it was a really great event. So for any listeners that are unfamiliar, it's not a marketing event. It's not anything for our company. It's just an event where we try to kind of advance the industry. We bring in, knowledgeable speakers about different areas like marketing and sales, and just try and propel the metal roofing industry forward for residential markets. So looking forward to that. That's the end of April. I think April 25th to 27th here in Dayton, Ohio. So, and that's metalroofingsummit.com for anybody interested. Before we get started with our guest today, I do want to let our listeners know we are doing challenge words this episode. So I'm sure a lot of you listeners are familiar with that, but each of us has chosen a word and given it to someone else, and our job is to try and weave it into the conversation. So we'll see if we're successful. I'll let you know at the end. But today, I do want to introduce our guest. This is Jacob Waddell, president of the Hemp Building Institute, which is a nonprofit organization that helps environmentally conscious consumers invest in the future of the planet by supporting the creation of better building practices. So thanks for joining us, Jacob. Glad you could be here on Construction Disruption with us.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. This is fun. I was just looking at that event, the Metal Roofing Summit.
Yeah.
It's really good. We've had some experiences with industry leaders just kind of getting together and communicating, and you not only does it build camaraderie, but you do learn a lot. And often there's business connections and important interactions that happen there that really lead to future things. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we love putting those on. I think it creates a lot of value for everybody. Like I said, kind of push the whole industry forward. So I do want to start by asking, can you tell us a little bit about the Hemp Building Institute and kind of how would you describe that to somebody who's unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Hemp Building Institute is kind of forwarding the hemp building and the natural building industries. Previously, I had been running the U.S. Hemp Building Association, the trade association in our industry, and this is moving away from that. We're a non-member based group, so there's no members. We're just basically collecting funds and executing on projects that are needed to move the industry forward. So currently we're looking at building codes. Last year with the USHBA, the U.S. Hemp Building Association, U.S. Hemp Building Foundation, I led the charge to get into the IRC, the International Residential Code. We're needing to finish off the commentary for that, and we're actually fundraising right now. So we're kind of moving forward with that. We're looking at ASTM standards for testing standards. We're trying to figure out, there's some performance testing that needs to get done for our industry. Primarily, major one is firewall testing. It's an important test. It's just expensive. And we have a material that is extremely fire resistant because basically it's hempcrete. And we'll go and I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that. Without going too far, we're trying to move the industry forward.
Definitely pushing that cause further. So I guess we'll go in real quick before we get any further. Can you explain to the listeners kind of a little bit about what hempcrete is and how, what role you hope to see in the building industry with hempcrete in the future?
Yes. So hempcrete is a aggregate-based composite. You have hemp as the aggregate in a lime structure, kind of like cement is or concrete is Portland cement and like rock aggregate. This is lime, kind of like limestone type lime, and a plant-based or hemp-based aggregate. It's used in wall systems. Basically, the most beneficial performance aspect of it is its insulation value. But you basically create an entire wall structure. So you'll have like a stick frame of a building, and then you have this around the stick frame, and it creates your insulation. It creates, your surface for putting materials on, such as plaster. Yeah, and there's fireproof, healthy, has known chemicals at all, no off gassing. Um, High pH in the lime, so it prevents like mold and things. So there's lots of benefits to it. But basically, it's a walling system. They also can use it in roofing, roofing insulation, as well as they've done some flooring insulation, like subfloor. Different companies are coming out with different products as well beyond hempcrete.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty versatile. And something you mentioned there, which I do want to touch on, sustainable building and green products and all this stuff is kind of a really big deal right now. It's been a big deal for a while, but how specifically does hempcrete and the hemp building industry, how does that kind of tap into that? How does that, kind of push that forward?
So, in a huge way, because hempcrete and most hemp products are actually carbon negative, which is a big change from highly carbon positive things. Yeah. To explain that, basically, as the plant grows, it absorbs a bunch of carbon. It turns that carbon into the plant material. It's photosynthesis. That then gets trapped into stone. So for the life of the building, that carbon that was absorbed by that plant is not in the environment anymore. So it actually leads to a carbon negative building product that really, if we talk about things like going carbon zero or net zero buildings and things like this, you're going to need carbon negative aspects to the building to balance off the required carbon positive things. Like you need metal in the building. You need, other things that this can balance. So.
You mentioned a little bit before your experience with the U.S. Hemp Building Association and all that. And I saw when I was, doing my research that you have some experience in manufacturing construction. How has that helped you kind of advance the cause, and how has that helped you, better serve, I guess, the hemp building cause?
I believe that a person is the accumulation of what they've gone through in life, and to get to a point.
Absolutely.
I have lived I've done many, many things. I've lived many lives, as I like to say. Being in the manufacturing industry, especially my time in automotive, taught me quality control systems, taught me high pressure situations, and how to manage and how to move through those. That has helped a great deal in my time at the U.S. Hemp Building Association and now with the Hemp Building Institute to guide it and to look at it from a business sense. This is very critical not only for the industry to have functioning organizations like this, but also being able to speak the language of businesses and companies. Because in the end, that's how we move forward. We're going to move forward when we get considerable interest from major players in the construction industry that want to do this. And again, gaining their confidence and doing the things that we need to do to set up quality systems in our industry, I think is how we get there.
Yeah, especially with this, a newer product and something like this, on this level where it has a lot of potential to change the way we build, a lot of potential to be widespread, have some widespread adoption and all that. So I can definitely see what you're saying, where having that to kind of sort of reassure the people who are looking to get into the market would be a huge boon. So where do you see hemp being maybe down the line, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years in the future? Do you think widespread adoption is, close on the horizon? Do you think it's going to take some time? I know you guys have had that big victory recently that's getting adopted in the code. And
so with this product, we actually have the benefit that it's been used in Europe for like
Hmm.
30 years. So we've kind of seen their growth pattern. There's obviously differences in our building environment than theirs. So we can't say that we'll behave the same way. Actually, there's a lot of potential we can be more explosive with the adoption and the use, but probably for different reasons. So, this product, hempcrete, really started in France in the 1980s. Um, it was trying to repair old buildings and old construction, and they were basically using concrete, and it was causing water issues because vapor couldn't permeate through the building material like it used to do in the older building materials. So that's how the guy came up with hempcrete, and it was mimicking old building materials. Like when you talk about the concept of mixing lime with organic material as an aggregate, this is an old practice. This is Romans consistently used it, and there's a lot of talk about old construction that they did during the expansion of the Roman Empire that are still operational, still standing, bridges and things like that. What we've seen in their environment is a steady uptake and increase and acceleration of its use.
Okay.
I would hope what we're trying to do and what we're trying to push for is people to realize it is an option.
Hmm.
We don't expect everyone to use hempcrete or hemp materials at all. It depends on your motivations, but we want it to be something that people can look at. If people are worried about their health, they go, okay, I don't want to have toxic materials in my house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm worried about sick building syndrome. I'm worried about mold, these type of things. Use hempcrete. Or, I want to cut my electrical bills down. So I want a better insulative material that doesn't have to use my HVAC as much, because that is for one, the highest electrical consumption of a house.
We run into that some with roofing too, where being able to lower that electric bill really makes a big difference in sustainability for the whole home, and especially with a product like that where it can be used in a lot of different areas, a lot of different. But yeah, no. I guess right along with that, you touched on a little bit. Are there any what unique advantages does hemp have for building purposes? We talked about that kind of sustainability. We talked about that insulation value. Is there anything else that makes it a great alternative for people to consider?
Yeah. So it again depends on your motivations and your concerns. If you're concerned and motivated by the environment, the negative carbon impact of the building, it's huge. And of course, it's a potential negative carbon because it depends on transport and everything. And really getting life cycle assessments on our industry is another critical hurdle that we need to cross.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
That's a big one. Health is another big one. There's people in our industry that are specifically in this industry. I know one person that was in remediation, like trying to deal with damage in houses in New Orleans that were mold ridden or had that nasty Chinese drywall that came in the late aughts, and these issues. And then we had like another one whose family had illness caused by sick building syndrome, and actually was mold presence. And both of these people are led into this industry for specifically health reasons. And then again, there is the value in the insulation itself and the high performance material that has a financial benefit. It may cost a little more to install, but over time you'll recoup that cost, and then it'll end up being cheaper.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to touch on too. Just that, like adoption costs. I don't, you kind of answered it there, but is hemp is a little bit more expensive than traditional kind of comparison, or what's it?
So, hempcrete, I hear between 20 and 30%
Okay.
greater cost. I'm getting some specific numbers. There was this project in North Dakota, Fargo, North Dakota, by Grassroots Development LLC, where they built two tiny homes, one with conventional construction and one with hemp-based construction. They're still crunching their numbers, I think, and working through it. But once that they get that developed, we'll have a better, like a good comparison in the market. But in general, the rule of thumb is 20-30%. But this is a high performance material. So if you're wanting to have a good quality home, you often spend 20 to 30% more.
Yeah, and I think that justification makes perfect sense. You're getting a better product for more money. Makes perfect sense. So,
and it's a time thing as well. We're at the opening stages of this industry.
mm-hmm.
It's like every industry. It's most expensive at the beginning until you get the economies of scale laying in.
Yeah.
And once we get there, we should see the prices drop. There was lots of talk during the lumber crisis. A year and a half ago, there's the lumber spike that everyone's like, oh no, this is the perfect time. And if our industry would have had its feet set a little bit more and had these pieces in place, that could have been a big deal to us, because that's all it takes is like a little fluctuation in a commodity, and suddenly we're cheaper than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to get our industry set up and awareness out. And then when something like that occurs, we'll suddenly become the best option.
Okay, yeah.
Are there other hemp-based building products or materials other than hempcrete?
Absolutely. So hemp wood is made in Murray, Kentucky. So they take the hemp stalks and they compress them into a wood-like material. Currently, there's furniture made out of it. Flooring is the major market. They're working right now towards a structural material. So that will be a big game changer when that comes out. They'll still have to compete with wood, but you suddenly have a viable wood alternative. And, the other one that I'd like to talk about is hemp wool. So that is like bat insulation. There's a company called Hemptecture in Idaho who just opened a factory like a couple days ago. Well, yeah, I guess this is going to be aired later, but like a week ago, they opened their factory for production, and like I said, it's bat insulation that's made out of the hemp fiber.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, there's also talk about like OSB board. People have created things like this before, just not to scale and not maintain production. There's a great deal of potential that can be replaced, or just help settle the market. I mean, the reality is there's potential here for a lot of local economies to survive and thrive. If we can get these type of industries, it'll build resilience in our construction industry, where we're no longer dependent on foreign sources for materials.
Yeah.
And and again, that's like kind of the wood conversation. That's really what it would be doing in that case. It's building resilience in the market. When one product for some reason or another skyrockets in price, you have another option, and you have a good solid option.
So it's probably safe to say there's more products coming down the line too, and more potential for what can be developed with it.
Yes, I know someone made a coffin out of one. Basically anything that it's like a wood type. It's a cellulose material.
Yeah.
You have the long fibers and you have like the woody core, so you can cover a lot of bases.
Awesome.
Interesting. Yeah.
Automotive parts, that's another big one for the industry, but
automotive.
That could also reflect.
Really? Huh?
Wow.
Yeah. So automotive parts with hemp have been used in Europe for a while. Door panels, things like this.
Okay.
It's a composite often, but they're also using it as filler material in injection molding. They're looking at it like this, and all these are just, a lot of it has to do with environmental impact. Is really the motivator for a lot of the larger industries.
I do want to go back to you were talking about earlier, that adoption in the International Residential Code. What was that like, and what does that kind of mean for hemp in the future?
All right. So what was it like? It was a grueling exercise. It spent a lot of time. Basically, you normally take years to develop code language and work through these things. We had a very tight window before the submission date for the the 2024 IRC. So in about 4 months, we crammed in like a year's worth of work and got it all done. Brought on some consultants, and I actually like right now we're fundraising for the last part, which is the commentary. And I'll kind of break that up. But we brought in some consultants that had experience with natural building materials in the codes, that had dealt with the straw bale, the straw clay, the cob, and the tiny house codes. And they brought them on to help us with this and kind of usher us through it and know the right people to talk to, etc. Uh, for us as an industry, the reason why we had to have a code was because our material is different than current building materials. There's certain aspects, like you needed a vapor open system. So you actually have vapor passing through your wall, and so you have moisture control that occurs from that. Like it's a moisture like dampening, and that's the same with the heat in general. It kind of works like a sink, if you will, for both humidity and for temperature. But because of that, you don't have a wrap on it, or the wrap has to have a vapor permeability high enough. But I think specifically in the code we said no wrap because it can get dangerous because you can have moisture trapping, and that could be a problem. So it's things like that were specific alterations from standard building procedures that we needed to write a code in to expressly state these things to prevent failures and to make sure that good quality construction is occurring.
I guess my next question would be, after that victory, what's kind of the next, what do you think the next step is for the hemp industry? Is it just kind of public awareness? Is it adoption? Is it, spooling up marketing or manufacturing?
Yeah, and I did miss something on that last one, but it leads to this one. So the next steps really, what we got accepted into the codes was the code language and a reason statement. There's another layer of the code, which is the commentary, which is it's kind of like an extra thing in the IRC that many people don't access or utilize, but it talks about the intent and clarifies anything in the code language that might be confusing, and it's kind of used by the top level code and building officials if they have any questions or concerns. So completing that's the next real major step, and then adoption. I'm sure you're all aware, being in this industry, that codes around this country are incredibly splintered, and sometimes it's state to state, sometimes it's county to county or city to city. That their offices get to decide what gets built there. And so we've been accepted into the model codes, but now we need to actually be adopted into the building codes in different jurisdictions. So that's a huge next step that will be quite an undertaking and a little bit less straightforward than the document.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And like you said, I mean, with all those different areas having different codes, and you touched on earlier too, the United States is a pretty geographically diverse country, and there's a lot of different areas that are maybe going to be better suited to using hempcrete and hemp materials, and others maybe not, or maybe there's different products that'll work best in different areas. So,
and the reality is, there's still a lot of learning that needs to go on with this material. There's buildings that have been built all over the country at this point, but we're less than 100 that I know of. Mm-hmm. And they've been built in different spots around the world, from cold climates to warm climate. We want to collect data the best we can. Like that house I mentioned up in North Dakota with the 2 tiny homes, they're actually collecting data. And really, if we can implement more data collection into new construction of these buildings, we could actually learn a lot and really move the needle forward. Performance data, the comparable is good because it's comparing to known buildings, but comparing the same technology in different locations will just get that data that other industries have been building for decades and decades, and we really need to catch up with.
Yeah, especially as a newer product, makes for something you just kind of need to get that wealth of information that makes it easier to make a lot of decisions. So definitely understand that. I do want to ask something that a topic that comes up a lot in all of our episodes is the skilled labor shortage and kind of creating jobs and stuff. How do you think hemp and the hemp building industry would be able to maybe help address that? Or what do you think? What kind of role would it play in that?
So, um, this is definitely a skill, especially if you're hand casting it, which is actually physically putting it in on site. There's a way with new technologies like panels and bricks that can actually be equivalent to masonry, and so
Okay.
you can overlap known technologies. Um, it's tricky because when you talk about the skilled labor shortage, is it a skill that people can learn and make a career out of? Absolutely. But we have a labor shortage. So we actually need something that's easier to use. And that really goes to precast, like bricks in a factory or panels in a factory type environment that are then installed. We're going to be working on a project here, hopefully, in the next year or so. We're doing the preliminary work on it right now, using a paneling system, most likely. And we're trying to do a build. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, in this area, so that we can have exposure to it to a wider audience, as well as we're trying to figure out if we can make an affordable housing version of this, like an affordable version, and kind of couple it with some other technologies to try to save on energy and things like this, so that we can make the argument that the increased building costs are counteracted by the lower operational costs and make them affordable to live in. So that's our hope. That's our challenge right now for ourselves, to see if we can come up with this and to see if we can work through the difficulties in that, because it's not going to be easy. But if we can figure it out, that should be progress. And again, getting back to the labor shortage, if it's easy to use, hopefully it doesn't strain the labor market.
No, and I think, especially with the potential that this product has, it could add a lot of jobs, could add a lot of capabilities for people, and could definitely have a big impact.
Yeah, if we talk about jobs as a whole,
Hmm.
we're talking about farmers. We're talking about processors like that to process this material. You have a manufacturer that needs to manufacture this material, and then you have the building side. So jobs as a whole, you can build local economies. It doesn't make sense to ship hemp long distances because of its low density. It takes a lot of, I guess, fuel per what you're using for it to really get to where it needs to be. I bought stuff, and I think 40% of my cost of my hemp that came in was the shipping costs.
Wow.
It's stuff like that. And right now we're importing stuff from Europe, so
Yeah.
Wow.
it's a little ridiculous. But yeah, so in general, job wise, it's good for the economy, the local economy, and really have an uplifting effect. Basically, if you get into a town or an area and you build the factory there that's going to produce parts, it makes sense to have a processor near them, and it makes sense for most of their material to come from farms near them.
Yeah.
So you can, by investing in the end product, and if there's a market to sell that end product, you can make that strong argument. You can actually kind of revitalize an area or a region. So it could be really impactful.
Yeah, no, that sounds really pretty awesome. I might be a little ignorant here, but or is there like a particular area that's best suited for hemp growing? Like, is it pretty widespread in the US that it would be effective, or?
So what we're seeing, I traveled around the U.S. last year and the year before my last role. You see different regions seem to be in the right position for different markets. So grain, we buy like hemp grain, like hemp hearts and things like this. Like I think it's something crazy. Like 80% of our production is actually coming from Canada and getting imported in, but we see a very strong grain market in the northern United States. Like North Dakota, South Dakota, that's what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Montana. Then you have like the fiber side. Fiber, it kind of makes sense where the industry is. So even though it can be grown anywhere, we have existing infrastructure like in the Carolinas, North Carolina specifically, seems to be a big hub of this. But anywhere that has like textile background and textile infrastructure, because for the most part, we don't want to build our own infrastructure. If we can utilize existing infrastructure, it behooves us. Yeah, that's kind of what you're seeing. You can grow it. They're trying to grow it everywhere. And again, it kind of, you can grow it anywhere. It's really just the idea is to get it where there's infrastructure that can handle it. When you talk about grains, that makes sense when you have large tracts of land. Things like this.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense earlier with you talking about, the economies of scale. So getting in places where it's already manufacturing, all that kind of capability is already around. So then it's just easier to kind of get that product adopted and get it on its way to being widespread. So I think that is most of my questions. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think, oh, I kind of want to say that before we get close to the end here?
Visit us at hempbuildinginstitute.org. O-R-G. Consider donating right now, if you can, to our fundraiser to help finish the IRC commentary. This is what I was talking about before. That this is really informing the highest level professionals on how to interpret our code. We can also add some things in there, and we're really trying to make sure that the hemp building industry has a voice in that document. We've been given the keys to create it ourselves, which is not something that always happens. And we want to make sure that we can really drive that home. The costs really are the consultants and things like that we need to cover. So we're fundraising for that. That's the big stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, before we finish up, one fun thing we like to do here at Construction Disruption is called rapid fire questions. So we like to kind of end each episode with this. So this is 7 questions. Some of them are a little serious, some are a little silly, but all we need you to do is just give us a short answer for each of them. So what do you think? Are you up for rapid fire?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. All right. I will start with the first question, then I'll let Ryan get alternate on the rest of them. So, all right. If you could take one person with you in a zombie apocalypse, who would it be?
Oh, geez. Okay, I have a problem right now. My problem is I have a relationship right now that's going very well. I would probably bring my girlfriend. And the reason is because she's an incredibly capable human being that I trust very intensely. So that's really what you need. You need trust and someone that's willing to work. So I'd probably bring her at this point.
Sounds perfect. Yeah.
We had someone answer that question with their grandma, and it was kind of the same reasoning behind it, I believe. I don't remember who it was, but they were like, yeah, I think my grandma.
Well, they said their grandma, they said, was like, still super active and like doing hiking trips and something, or like a canoe, like, so that, it makes sense, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. A beast you can trust.
Right.
That's what you need.
Yep. Sounds like a grandma I wouldn't want to mess with. All right. Next question. Are you a night owl or a morning person?
I'm a morning person. That's reality. I do my best stuff the first 3 or 4 hours of the day, and then it all kind of like peters out.
Interesting.
You get burnt out around like 1 or 2 p.m.
Yeah, somewhere around lunch. I mean, like I normally still have meetings and things happening, but my best functioning time is basically 8 to 10 usually, and then at 10 is when my meetings start. So those first 2 hours are normally pretty good, and then I like the night. I do. I like to go out and have fun, but to be honest, I'm a morning person.
All right, next one. This is kind of a fun one. If you were a wrestler, what would your entrance song be?
All right, so maybe "Zombie" by Fela Kuti.
Interesting.
So I've been listening to Fela like a little bit. I actually listened to a new Fela song yesterday, and it's this guy from Nigeria. It's Afrobeat, is like that he started back in the 70s and stuff like that. But it's very rhythmic, like really good beats, and it's almost all like war and protest songs. So like the one I was listening to yesterday, it was like he had been in jail for 12 years and kind of wrote the song while in jail, and then came out of jail and put this song out and then cause a big uproar.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's yeah. So I think that would be it. That or like almost any, well no. Recently, uh, I think it's Billy Jack by Curtis Mayfield.
Hmm.
I like the rhythm in that. Goat, almost anything by Goat, probably.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look some of this up. So.
Yeah, me too. Who was the first artist?
Fela Kuti. So it's Felakuti. And yeah, the song Zombie is like talking about soldiers and war, basically.
I love when we ask these questions because it's never, I mean, maybe occasionally we've had someone with a common song, but it's usually always someone I've never heard of. And I'm like, well, I got some new music to listen to. Next question. What impact do you hope to have on the world?
So I have made it my mission in life to do what I can to try to help the environment in the world. I think we need to. I understand civilization. I like civilization. I like my house. I like all the luxuries we have. We just need to figure out how to work better with the world around us. I think these materials, the hemp materials, natural building in general, is a way to move towards that and to do that, so that we can both have our great comforts that we've come accustomed to, and at the same time, just work more in harmony with our environment.
Gotcha. Very noble. All right, here's kind of a fun one. If you had to delete all but 3 apps from your phone, which would you keep? Like, would you go cold turkey with social media, or what do you think?
See, I'm not a big social media person. Like, I'm having to learn that in order to like push the Hemp Building Institute. But honestly, I was basically a ghost on social media until like my birthday last year, when I was like, I have to make a change
Yeah.
because I need people to actually hear my voice. So social media wouldn't be an issue. Um, Music's a big thing to me. I do listen to a lot of Spotify. I don't know if Mail counts as an app, but I sadly have to be connected. Probably a game. I've been doing a lot of there's like this hard Sudoku game, Killer Sudoku.
Killer
So
Stone,
it's
yeah.
like Sudoku, but you have like internal boxes that have a number on it. So as well as the normal Sudoku, you have like 2 things put together that say 17. So it's a 9 and an 8 in those 2 numbers, because those are the only 2 things that equal 17. And it just adds another layer to it. I'm a math person, so
Yeah. No, I was introduced to Killer Sudoku. I think I found it on like a YouTube video. There's a couple guys that do that and do like really absurd, crazy hard Sudokus, but it's a really fun game, and it goes really deep. I think I've done an expert like once, but I had to cheat and get like a hint or 2, but pretty fun.
What's the best or worst advice you've ever been given?
it's hard to. I can't actually think of like quotes from anybody, but I think very crucial advice. You got to live. Like you can't just sit your life on the sideline. You gotta live and do things. You're gonna make mistakes. That's a reality, and you gotta keep moving on through them. Worst advice: um, invest in crypto, especially right before that crash last year.
Yeah, it's got to come back, right?
Yeah.
I think I bought a small fraction of Bitcoin right before it crashed, and I was like, well, and that was my first like inkling of being interested in it, and yeah, that ruined it.
I know some people did very well in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and I think I'm about even because I got in like right about the time before it really picked up, and I think where it's at now is about when I originally bought it. Yeah, some people did really well, not everybody.
Alrighty, last question. What do you think you'd like to do when you retire?
So, the life I'm living right now is really what I want to do with my life. But so it's kind of like, I guess ideally what I'm doing is traveling around the world trying to help people improve their situations, hopefully, and both environmentally friendly and socially uplifting way. There's a lot of potential with what we do with these materials that like communities such as like indigenous communities around the world, or even smaller economies that especially if they have labor force, can come in and utilize this material and really be on the forefront of a new industry, as well as creating housing and creating jobs. So when I retire, I'd like to travel the world and keep working to help people.
Nice. Awesome.
Sounds like you're in a good spot right now. I'm going to, I don't mean to exasperate, but I want to throw in an 8th question here for you. All this talk about hemp reminds me of the first hemp necklace I got at the county fair in the 90s. Do you own any hemp necklaces?
I don't own any hemp necklaces. I do own some hemp shirts. I think I have hemp shoes. I got a hemp belt on.
Okay.
I'm not the. There are certain people that like own a lot of hemp in my industry. I'm not quite there, but I do not own. I just don't wear necklaces. That's
yeah, I'm a little disappointed you didn't have one on for this, but we'll let it slide.
All right, next time I will go out and I will buy a hemp necklace specifically for this.
Nice. All right, well, I do want to, before we kind of finish up here, I do want to say, so we did, I think all 3 of us get our challenge words in, so I'll let Ryan, you go first. What was your word?
Exasperate. I don't even think I used it properly, but I had to get it in there at the end.
Yeah, I think it worked out great. So mine was turkey, which I got in there all right. It took me a little bit to think of it. And then Jacob, what was your word?
Mine was calibrate, and I said calibration.
That's all right. That counts.
But when did you use turkey? I must have missed it.
I said if you had to delete all the apps, I said, would you go cold turkey with social media?
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, you've tricked both of us. Neither of us caught it.
Yeah.
That was under the radar, but I do remember that. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Nice. Awesome. Well played.
So that we all I guess I'll take it for this episode. So. Well, you mentioned it before, but what's the best way for people to kind of learn more about hemp or learn more about the Hemp Building Institute or get in contact with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
So hempbuildinginstitute.org, hempbuildinginstitute.org website, social media like Instagram is hemp_building_institute. Or on Facebook, I think it's the same thing. I think it's hemp_build. Oh no, that may be Hemp Building Institute, just one thing. I can't exactly remember. I just made it. Yeah, it's probably a good way. My email is jacob@hempbuildinginstitute.org. So you can reach out to me there if you need to talk to me about anything. The Hemp Building, U.S. Hemp Building Association is a really good place. The International Hemp Building Association has some good information. So there's a couple other organizations that are in our world that are very helpful. We're growing. So hopefully more and more, the answer will be everywhere. But
awesome, yeah.
Right now, those are some of the best spots.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the interview. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much. And again, I think this summit you are having for your industry is a great thing. And if I was in metal roofing, I would be going.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. All right, and thanks to our listeners, too, for tuning into this episode of Construction Disruption with Jacob Waddell, president of the Hemp Building Institute. So keep an eye out for future episodes. We have some more great guests coming up. And if you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Till next time, stay curious and open to innovation. This is Isaiah Industries signing off until the next episode of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.